Bears belong to the category of predatory animals that prefer to lead a separate lifestyle, so they can be seen in a group only during breeding periods. Males are aggressive not only to their relatives, but also to cubs if they stay near the female for a long time. In this regard, females quite often have to protect their offspring from bloodthirsty males. We are starting our story. This terrible and heartbreaking story took place in a small town in Russia. The heroes of this story are stepmother Victoria and her stepson named Anton. A tragic story happened to Anton as a child, and he remained confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Anton lived with his father and stepmother. Her own mother left her husband after the tragic story with Anton and dumped a heavy burden on her husband's shoulders. My husband raised his disabled son all alone for a long time, only occasionally his parents helped. But one day he met a woman. This woman turned out to be the same Victoria. They had an affair and soon they got married. She was happy with everything. She loved her new husband and treated the disabled boy well. My husband was over the moon with happiness. Finally he found the one for whom a disabled child was not an obstacle. She constantly took care of the child, took care of him as if he were her own son. Anton also showed Victoria respect and treated her like a native person. But this attitude did not last long. Victoria became worse and worse towards Anton. She considered him a burden and thought that he was interfering with their happy family life. She wanted to have children of her own, but her husband constantly told her that they already had enough worries with Anton and there was no need for a second child in the family. She was very angry with her husband, and most of all she hated Anton, but that he was preventing them from building a real family. And at one point she couldn't stand it. While her husband was on a business trip, she decided to take desperate measures. She came up with an ingenious plan to take the child deep into the forest and leave him there to die. Under the pretext of a walk, she took Anton, and they went by car to the nearest forest. After they arrived at the right place, the stepmother left her paralyzed stepson in a remote forest. Her heart was full of anger and hatred for this boy who could never be a real son to her. She thought that his disappearance in the most unsightly place would be a good sign for his father and he would give his love only to her, and she would finally be able to forget about this burden that she had to take care of. After Victoria left Anton, she hurriedly left the crime scene, got into the car and drove home. The boy, helpless and alone, was sitting on a wheelchair in the depths of the forest. His eyes filled with tears, and he began to panic, realizing that he had been abandoned. Victoria hoped that wild animals would find him or that he would die of dehydration. But fate had other plans for him. Fate sent him a savior angel. It had already been about 1 hour, and the boy realized that most likely no one would come for him. He had already resigned himself to his fate, when suddenly he heard the crackling of branches from behind. Turning back, he saw a majestic bear, which apparently came to the smell of a man. The boy began to panic even more, because the death of the bear's paws was even more terrible than the death of exhaustion. But instead of attacking or running away, the bear came closer and carefully sniffed the baby. There was compassion and understanding in his eyes. He realized that this boy needed protection. So began an unusual day for the bear and the boy. The bear stayed by the boy's side, not moving a step away. He became his keeper and protected him from any danger that might lie in wait for them in the forest. They spent the whole day together, lonely souls united by a sudden bond. Thus, the boy spent the whole day waiting for help from caring people. He understood that he was in the depths of the forest and most likely there were no people walking here, but hope still did not subside in his eyes. As it turned out, not far from this place in the forest lives a lonely old man. After the death of his beloved wife, he left his apartment in the city and moved to live in the forest, closer to nature. It was his old dream, but because of his wife he could not fulfill it. But when she was gone, he did everything, I decided to take a desperate step and moved from a crowded city to a forest house all alone. In the evening, when darkness fell, the old man decided to take a walk around the forest and at the same time collect branches and chips for kindling the bathhouse. He was making his way past the thicket, picking up fir branches along the way, when suddenly his gaze fell on a boy in a wheelchair who was sitting all alone. Seeing him alone in such a remote place, he realized that something was wrong and decided to check what was going on. When he went to the boy to help, an evil bear came out of the bushes and began to growl at the old man with all his menacing appearance. The old man was very scared, but knowledge of wildlife helped to avoid serious consequences. He began to shout loudly and wave a fiery torch. Seeing the actions of the old man, the bear was scared and ran away. The forester stopped next to the boy and, feeling very anxious, came closer. He was shocked to see that the boy had been left in this state in such a dangerous place. Anton began to tell that his stepmother decided to get rid of him in this way, that she took him to the forest, left him and left. After this story, the old man took the boy to his hut, where he fed him, gave him warm milk and contacted the rescue services, telling the whole story. The rescuers said they would be able to come tomorrow morning, since the road to the old man's house is long. The next morning, the old man heard a knock on the door. It was the police. They took a statement from the old man and took Anton away. The boy was saved thanks to the attentiveness of the forester and the care of the bear. He was taken to the hospital, where he received the necessary medical care. Soon after, his foster mother was detained by the police. The police contacted the father of his son, who was on a business trip, and told him the sad news. He arrived from a business trip the next morning. He could not believe that Victoria could do this to Anton. She seemed to him a kind and caring woman. After this incident, he severed all ties with her and her family. He threw all her things out of the house and cut her out of his life forever. The stepmother appeared in court and was charged with the attempted murder of her stepson. The whole country was shocked by this story, and many demanded strict punishment for the woman who allowed such inhuman treatment of a child. The trial was long and painful for everyone involved in this case. The stepmother was found guilty and sentenced to prison. The judge expressed his indignation at the woman's actions and stressed that such child abuse would never be tolerated in society. Anton's father, in turn, blamed himself for what happened. He drank a lot and worried about this situation, but his parents helped him live through this period of life and his condition returned to normal. And now they live happily with their father, and also sometimes visit the old man in the forest who saved Anton's life. Anton is very grateful to him for saving him, and also he does not forget that bear who did not touch him, and thanks to such a happy coincidence he remained alive. The little boy, thanks to the bearish care and kindness of the forester, was able to survive this nightmare and start a new life. His story has become a symbol of strength and endurance, as well as an example of how even in the darkest places of the world there is kindness and compassion. Such an amazing story happened to Anton and his father. It's hard to imagine what could have happened if the old man hadn't appeared in the forest at that moment. Dear friends, if you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel where you will find many more interesting things.